Welcome to the How to Hire podcast. I'm your host, Matt Shore, CEO of StevenDouglas. I've been in the recruiting industry for now 30 years, and I have seen it all. I've seen companies that do an amazing job of becoming an employer of choice, and I've seen companies who make about every mistake you can make. They wind up with a lot of employee dissatisfaction, lots of turnover. And our goal really here of the podcast is to learn from folks that are getting it right. We've invited great leaders on the show that are going to tell us some of the things that they're doing to help their companies succeed in this war for talent. Today, I'm going to introduce you here to Dan Chait, CEO of JM Family Enterprises, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for 25 years now. And have had an opportunity to watch from the sidelines as he's grown through the ranks over the last 23 years at JM Family Enterprises, which is one of the best known companies in town as it relates to success in hiring and retaining and keeping great talent around, growing them through the organization like Dan did here. So really excited to have you on the show. I appreciate you coming.
Thanks for the invite, Matt. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So let's get into it a little bit. I think some of the folks around the country may not be as familiar as the folks in the local market about JM. So maybe tell us a little bit about the company. Give us a sense for the scope and scale of the business, the heritage of the business, and what you guys do.
Sure. Well, thanks. Pleasure to be here, as I said. So we often think of JM Family as one of the largest companies most people have never heard of. So it's not, our company name is not a consumer brand. We don't promote it. We use it, in the local community, particularly around philanthropic work. But our heritage really goes back in the automotive industry, and we were one of the first distributors for Toyota products when Toyota came to the U.S. in the 60s. So our founder, Jim Moran, became a distributor for the 5 southeastern states: Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Alabama. And we continue to serve in that role for Toyota to this day. And over the years, in addition to being a distributor, Mr. Moran set other businesses to support and enhance the activity of local dealers. So we created a finance company, we created an insurance company, and that really is the foundation, that's the core of our automotive activities. And we've, as I said, been in business as a distributor since 1968. So JM Family Automotive is really our legacy, our heritage, and it really all starts with that. In recent years, after the Great Recession, we decided we needed to diversify. We needed to have exposure to industries in addition to auto. So we've bought a few non-auto companies. We've started an investment business that we've now deployed a considerable amount of capital into. And so we're much more diversified than we were back preceding the Great Recession. And we have about 4,000 associates in the auto space, about 1,000 in the non-auto space. And a lot of our activity is based in the 5 southeastern states, but not all of it. For our insurance business and for our non-auto businesses, we're spread around the country, and in some cases a little bit internationally as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, with you being headquartered here in Deerfield Beach, I've been in the South Florida community for quite some time. And, I asked my team as we were thinking about who we're going to have on the podcast as we launched the program here, and said, who are the companies that are out there that are doing a great job, right, as it relates to talent? What are the companies that are best known for being an employer of choice? And I would just tell you, it was an easy one to ask you to come on the show. I'm grateful that you were willing to do it, because my leadership team said you have to have JM Family on the show. We've had the pleasure and honor of working with the company for over 30 years, and it's amazing to me how many people we place there have just been there for so long, whether they started on some kind of contract assignment or in a low-level role and kind of grew up through the company. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your founder, Jim Moran, and just the heritage of the business, how he thought about culture, how he treated people.
Yeah, I think, so we're very proud of our heritage, our founder, Jim Moran, and the culture that really he created, but that continues today at our company. So when I think of Mr. Moran, he was an individual who really valued long-term, mutually rewarding relationships. And that impacted how he dealt with business partners, as well as internally how he dealt with associates. And so an example, early in my career at the company, I was at a meeting with Mr. Moran, and I had presented a recommendation I was implementing to change a vendor, save the company some money, and provide equal service. And he listened, and he thought it was an interesting idea. And he said to me, Dan, when you evaluated that, did you take into consideration how long we've been doing business with the incumbent and how supportive they've been of our charities over the years? I said, well, Mr. Moran, I didn't. And, it was pretty clear he wasn't about saving the last dollar. He wasn't about making the last, amount that could have been his dividend. He was about mutually rewarding long-term relationships. And we continue to this day to engage with our business partners that way.
Talk about the associate first kind of mentality that he has instilled in the company that you're having to keep coming forward.
And you can absolutely see it in how he started, and we continue to engage with our associates. There's a bond, there's a connection that the company seeks to, and I think does, create with associates that is mutually rewarding. The company gives a lot and the company gets a lot. And I think that is sort of how he really thought of it going in. He knew when he was getting JM Family going that he could not overachieve by himself. He needed to surround himself with a team of associates that were aligned with his interests, that were trained and developed and equipped to succeed, and he empowered them. And he always talked about the associates he works with. He never talked about people that worked for him. And we use the term associates. I use it sort of naturally. I don't even think about it anymore, but we don't really call each other employees. We're all associates. We work together. And he created an environment where people felt empowered. They had the skills and the resources to be successful. And he stayed involved, but he didn't dictate. He didn't direct. He would often influence by asking questions, much like he did with me, with my brilliant idea. And he would push for better results, push for overperformance, but he did it in a way that was really enhancing the effectiveness of the team, not detracting, and just showing great support and appreciation for their hard work. And he built connections. He really made people feel valued and created followership to the point where people would do anything for him. And people knew if they exceeded expectations, if they overachieved, they would benefit too, because he set up benefits, he set up to share in the profits of the company with his associates. And there were great rewards to being part of the success at JM Family. And that continues today. One of my concerns is that people think of that as our culture. It's all about the benefits, or it's all about the way the company shares profits. I think that's part of our culture, but it's really not our culture. Our culture is much more about how he started and we continue to engage with associates, to treat each other, to value each other, and to try to succeed as a team. And so now I have a role where I really focus daily on trying to perpetuate that. And now that he's been gone for 18 years, feel we need to be more proactive to make sure it stays the way it has been, and maybe even gets better, but it's going to take effort.
But talk about that feeling of like, wow, this is an immense responsibility to keep this spirit alive that everybody has come to expect from leadership.
Yeah, so it is a significant responsibility. And, I feel privileged to be in the role. The good news is we have a fantastic foundation where the culture is present and is strong, and the connection we seek with associates exists. And so it's about continuing it, growing it if we can, but we're not starting in a deficit really at all. It's really strong still. But I do think about it a lot. And, I think where I am in the succession of leadership at JM Family, I really focus on the culture because I want to make sure when I retire, whenever that's going to be, that I can look back and feel like I succeeded in enhancing the culture and it didn't deteriorate on my watch. Because I think naturally, with time that passes since he's been gone, leaders who were around when he was around are now retired. 70% of our associates have joined since he passed away. Naturally, if we're not proactive, if we don't make it a priority, I do think over time it would deteriorate. And we don't want that to be the case. So we talk about it a lot, and I've made it a priority. Fortunately, I feel like I have a fantastic leadership team to work with. They have great teams underneath them in their businesses that they run. And so I don't feel the responsibility of having to run all of our businesses. I have a role to play in that, but we have talent managing our businesses, and I focus a lot more on culture, on associate development, on succession. Those are really the areas that I think of as my primary responsibilities.
And how do you measure whether you're being as effective as you hope to be?
Yeah.
And I mean, are there other companies that you look at that you like to emulate? A lot of times as leaders, like, we hope we have a great culture. We talk about culture a lot. We work really hard at it, but we don't always know whether they're feeling the same way, we think we're performing, right? And so I'd be curious how do you guys measure it, and how do you make sure you're staying ahead of the curve?
So we use, and have now for a number of years, an internal survey tool produced and made available by Glint. And it's customized for our purposes. And we survey associates internally, anonymous surveys. We measure engagement. We get verbatim comments. And we take those surveys very seriously. And we go through the comments, and we really try to determine what do we want to respond to and what can't we or don't we want to. You can't please everybody, unfortunately. But the Glint tool has been really powerful for us in a couple ways. One, we've been doing it for long enough now, we can use it to manage trends. We can see how things are evolving and changing. You can also highlight where there isn't great engagement in certain departments or certain areas, and you can really figure out where to focus. And so we've used that tool a lot. We used to rely more on external surveys. We were part of Fortune's survey of the greatest places to work for a long time, but we really decided it was more important to survey and get more insights from our own associates so that we can get better. Another thing we've started this year, which we've only done two of so far, but we have had great success on both of them, is we've reached out to a couple of other companies. In the cases that we've already visited, 2 other private companies that have strong cultures. And we've asked if they'd be willing to get together, and we've sent some leaders to their offices. They've brought some of their leaders together, and we've talked about what we do, and we've talked about how we push our culture, how we think of our cultures, what tactics we each deploy, and we've gotten some great perspective from other companies, and I think that's something we're going to continue doing too. So I can't say that there's an organization we per se emulate or want to be like, but I think learning from what other people have tried that's worked or not worked is really valuable. And so we've tried to put more structure around that, and I think that's worked really well.
Got it. And then talk a little bit about the difference between the employees you've had with the company that have been there 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, there's, I know one guy who went there out of high school who's in his late 50s who's still there. But when you think about the demographics of our workforce and what's important to someone my age, middle 50s and above, and then what's important to somebody who's kind of on the rise in their 30s and 40s, and what's important to the new people coming out, right? The kids, my kids' age, 24, 26, that are, entering the workforce, and they have a different, view of what life should look like and how work-life balance. We hear that a lot. How do you cater to such a broad range of employee base up and down that continuum?
Yeah. So we do think a lot about that, and time will tell if we're getting it right.
Right.
We don't really know. But one of the things we try to focus on is flexibility, and we have changed some benefits to create more appeal for applicants or associates that are newer to the workforce. Since COVID, we do have, we don't mandate 5 days in the office, which again is demonstrating some flexibility on our part. And we try to listen to feedback that we get from associates across the sort of career spectrum and appeal as much as we can to as many as we can. But it's harder to adjust. We have some practices that go back a long time that we value. An example, our company, since Mr. Moran founded our company, has always provided very generously for retirement. So his view was if an individual gives their career to his company, he wanted to make sure that their retirement would be taken care of, which was not uncommon in the day. It's not common anymore. But it's often hard to convince an applicant who's earlier in their career that retirement savings is something they should value. They tend to care more about, can I work from home? What's my pay? And other things that are important to them. And so we're not going to give up on focusing on retirement, and we're not going to give up on preparing for their retirement. But we need to do, I think, a better job convincing them or explaining to them why there's value there that they should appreciate maybe more than they do today. It's not something that rates highly when you poll them, but it's something that will make a difference. And the earlier you start, the much more you can do for somebody. And so we won't give up on it, but I think we can promote it better and talk about it better. So we're trying to be more flexible. We trying to develop more long-term relationships with colleges and universities and become more known. We don't have a brand, as I said earlier, that's all that widely known at the JM family level. When we do some recruiting, we talk more about Toyota and our Southeast Toyota businesses. But, we're on a journey, just like all other companies are, to see if over time we can, crack that code and be successful with applicants and associates up the spectrum.
Well, I know you guys invested a lot in the campus over there. How much appeal do you think that helps when you're trying to get folks to want to come in the office, want to be there? I mean, having good food choices and
Sure.
great coffee and all the different, the on-site fitness and all the things that you offer. I mean, you feel like that makes a really big difference? I know you made a big investment.
We made a big investment. We've been in the new facility now for about 5 years, and we definitely think it helps recruit and attract applicants to our company. It's a statement about what the company stands for, wanting to create a great environment for associates to work. We spend a lot of time at work, so we have a lot of amenities like you talked about. We also focused a lot on collaborative space when we designed the floor plans of the different buildings. So we have great collaborative space, great technology, and we definitely think it helps. Still, associates like the flexibility of working from home, and so we do allow that. But I think without the new campus, it would be even harder to attract people to come back, and maybe harder to attract new, associates to the company. So it's been a good investment, and the buildings are great, and it does create a great environment, and it's really an enhancement to our culture too. So you and I have had coffee together, and I eat lunch on campus whenever I'm in town. And I sit with associates and I interact with people. And when we were together, people pass, and you end up invariably getting into conversations that aren't scheduled, they're not planned. And I think to have that kind of access to associates helps promote the culture, for them to get time to speak to, whether it's myself as the CEO or other senior leaders. It's access associates might not normally have at other companies. And I think our environment, our campus really promotes that type of interaction. And I think it's important, and we value that.
Now that you're becoming a company with thousands of employees spread across multiple business units, spread across the country, obviously you're not going to know everybody's name.
Yeah.
How do you have the culture that you guys want to set the tone for here at kind of the holding company level and at the campus level? How do you extend that out and have it cascade across the company through multiple levels of executive management, middle management, and then at the associate level? How do you get that same spirit of collaboration and teamwork and love of company and and the customer focus and all the things that you're looking for? When you're in the hallways here, it's a little easier to feel it, right? And when you're out in a smaller operation, it's got to be a little different. I know we're experiencing that as we became national. So what are some of the things that you're doing to make sure that is really pervasive throughout the company?
It's hard, and I think we do it well, and I also think there's room for improvement. I think we can do it better. So, when we acquire companies, we're very conscious of the culture of the company we're talking to. And we wouldn't buy a company that had a culture that was counter to ours. And the size of the company impacts that too. How big is the company you're bringing in? So we think of those things when we're making acquisition decisions. But whether it's an acquired company or whether just part of our auto business that's remote from Deerfield, it's harder. And I think each area has their own version of the culture. It's probably sort of driven in part by leadership that's there. And so one of the things that I talk a lot about is leadership and culture. It's a shared responsibility. I sort of have this vision that, it maybe starts with me and my role, but that the whole leadership organization down to supervisors needs to be aligned and needs to be really working together in unison to create the environment for all associates so that their daily experience is a JM family experience. And it doesn't happen perfectly because it's a lot of leaders when you sort of get down to that level. I think at our company, it's over 500 leaders down to the supervisor level. So it's hard to make sure they're all coordinated and working in unison. But we can continue to get better, and we do focus and prioritize it. I have this vision that, to keep the culture going, it's all about making sure associates feel connected with our company. And connections happen, I think, over time. It's not instantaneous. A new associate comes in, they can read a handbook, see a video, maybe listen to somebody speak, and that's all fine. But to really feel committed, it takes time. And I think it takes experiences. Over time, you see how the company reacts to situations. You see how associates react when other associates have challenges or problems, how we deal with vendors. Some people really get motivated by our philanthropic work that the company does or the Jim Moran Foundation does. So we're all different, and we're all motivated by different things, and we all have these connections, these experiences, and I think of it as like a mosaic of experiences. You all, over time, have your own version of a JM family experience, but our culture is so strong. I think the vision and the view people all develop of our company is very similar because our values are so clear, and there is consistency with how we think and act. So creating those experiences and that connection takes all leaders to be involved. And so whether, again, it's a newly acquired company or part of auto, we need all leaders to really be engaged and working together. And over time, we will connect with everybody. And when associates feel that connection, I believe, they feel a sense of belonging. They know that this is where they need to be or want to be. And they will do anything at that point. They will give their all. They will work hard. They will be innovative and creative. They'll be there on weekends and at nights if they need to for a project. And together we will excel. And so that's how I think we're trying to handle it over different geographies, through different leadership, but all with the common focus of creating connections with associates, really one at a time, because it's an individual kind of situation.
Yeah, and I think companies have an opportunity when you think about good times and bad times. Most companies are really great at treating people really well in good times, right? When the business is thriving, the economy is great, there's not a lot of turmoil. It's just a lot of companies are great places to work. I think where companies really show up is in the tough times. And it doesn't have to be a big economic turmoil or a tough time in the industry. It could be a tough time an individual person's having in their life outside of work, right? And how do you respond to that? How does their manager respond to it? How do their coworkers respond to it? What does leadership do to support them, right? And then those become the stories that get told over and over again.
100%.
But I do think it becomes a mosaic, right? Because people tell each other about, well, hey, there was this one time and this one person, but then when they experience and when they go through something, and the company supports them, their manager supports them, I think that's when you really show up, right?
I agree 100%. And, there's countless stories I could think of that demonstrate that. And the other version of that is how associates step up to support each other.
Well, that's when you're getting culture right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's great. Well, maybe just share some last words of wisdom, like one or two or three things that you would, if you think about leadership, obviously not everybody's a CEO, but anybody who's in some sort of leadership capacity, whether it's in the C-suite or they're an up-and-coming leader, as they think about their company, their personal leadership growth journey, what are some of the things that you would advise someone as they think about people, that are going to work with you and for you?
So, I think when one becomes a leader of a team, whether it's, a manager first leading a group or someone in my role, I strongly believe that the priority needs to change from being about yourself to being about your team. You need to prioritize your team. You are there to serve your team, and it's not the other way around. And if you were to poll the market, I don't know, maybe 50% of leaders think that way. It's not universal at all. And I think a lot of leaders misstep because of that. So I feel like when you become a leader, your priority needs to be your team. equip them, power them, give them feedback, make sure they're being developed, get rid of obstacles that are in their way. And if your unit is successful, you will be known as a successful leader. You don't need to worry about the fact that you didn't do something. You led the team to success, and that will be a positive reflection on you. And I think that's how leaders should think. I also strongly endorse emotional intelligence and the journey we're all on. I endorse people getting more familiar with it, learning, taking classes to become more emotionally intelligent. I think at the end of the day, leadership is about relationships, and EI is a discipline to help individuals create more long-term trusting relationships. And it's a bunch of art probably, but there's some science too. And there's a structure that I think leaders would benefit from. And in our organization, I've been pushing EI for a while. I think it's a great discipline for people to get close to, and it would help as a leader, but it also helps in your personal life and helps people as individuals. It's not just work related. I guess the last thing I'd say is surround yourself with a great team and make sure you have people working with you and leading with you that share your vision, that if they're leaders working with you, that they can be a part of what you're trying to lead towards and accomplish. And that's a big factor when we recruit, making sure it's one thing to assess an applicant's ability to do a job and what's their experience and background and can they be successful functionally. A huge area of our focus is can they succeed in our culture?
Yeah, I always like to say, don't forget what it was like to be treated great, and try to emulate
Sure.
some of the things that the ways you were treated that really left an impression on you. And I had those experiences at Price Waterhouse
And
early on, and then please do not forget when you're treated poorly,
Right.
how it made you feel,
Right.
and try not to become that person or that leader, and avoid making the same types of mistakes. And I think look, we're all making great decisions every day. We're all making mistakes every day. You have to be willing to be humble, but I think that willingness to learn from experiences that you've been through, and then carrying them forward, right? For the others that you're there to serve. And I love the way you put that, because I think about servant leadership is a terminology that came up over the years, but it's people. They deserve a great leader who cares about them, that cares about their success, that wants to see them win, and we'll be really invested in it. Really invested in it. So, well, I want to thank you for coming. This was a great conversation. I'm sure the
Appreciate the
listeners learned a lot from you, and I clearly did. And look forward to continuing to interact and learn from you as we get to here in the local community. I thank everybody for tuning in today. If you liked the episode, I'd love it if you could comment and maybe even subscribe. It would also be great if you would follow Steven Douglas on LinkedIn, go to our website, and we've got some great episodes lined up here. Great leaders that are going to come talk to us. I hope there was some take-home value here for you. I know I learned a lot today, and hopefully we can all kind of grow together.